presentation on the process of Jordan's Principle. My name is Megan Parsons, and I'm a Project Planning and Research Officer for Jordan's Principle. This presentation is going to explain what happens after you submit your application, what you can expect before receiving a decision from Indigenous Services Canada. Indigenous Services Canada are the ones who make decisions and approve applications, not our team at the Cree Health Board. It's important to know that the workers who make the decisions are based in an office in Montreal, and it's very possible that they don't know the reality of the child or the environment in which they live. So this is why we review your application, your support letter and documents, and make sure that all the information you have provided is enough to explain the child, the situation, your request, and the gap in service. So before you submit your application, you want to make sure that you have all your documents ready and completed. This is going to make the process much quicker, and you'll be able to receive your decision as quickly as possible. So for your application, you need to have the form completed. You want to have your budget and your quotations, the total cost of what you're requesting. So next you want your consent forms. These are very important, especially if the application was filled out by an authorized representative like a community worker. The parent or guardian needs to sign the application form, confirming that they've seen and agree with all the information, and they also need to fill out the Jordan's Principle consent form. Children over 16 can provide their own consent and sign their own application forms. Another important piece are your supporting documents, things like a doctor referral, a professional's report, for example, speech and language pathology report, occupational therapy report, your individualized education plan, anything that you think is relevant to support your request. And lastly, your support letter. You don't want to forget about that. And if you want any information on how to complete an application form or what to include in your application, you can watch the video on individual applications. So once you've completed all of this and you've gathered all your information, you can send it to our general email. The next step is for the Jordan's Principle PPRO to review the application. We make sure that your application is complete, that there's no information missing. If we think your application could be stronger, we might suggest that you include more information or that you provide more documents. We will inform you if there's anything missing or if we suggest something. For example, let's say I receive an application from a parent for an ADHD assessment. The application form, the consent form, and a quotation for a professional service fees are included in the application. But I notice the application is missing a support letter. Because that's an important piece of the application, I would contact the parent and let them know that the application is missing a support letter. We can then give you suggestions on what to include in your letter or who you can ask to provide a support letter. In this case, I might ask the parent why they want an assessment for ADHD, and in that conversation, the parent might say that they've had a conversation with the teacher or that they've started noticing behaviors. In that case, I could recommend maybe the teacher write a support letter about the child and their needs, or I might tell the parent, does the child have a referral from the doctor? Once the parent collects all the information requested, the review is complete, and then we will submit the application to Indigenous Services Canada. Some common things we might suggest you include in your application are quotations, links for items requested so that our administrative technician knows exactly what to purchase if the application is approved, receipts for items that you have purchased, or invoices from professionals. We might suggest you include a prescription or a complete total cost. Sometimes applicants forget to include shipping, taxes, or if the item is in US dollars, forget to change it to Canadian. So these are all things that we might see in our review process and then contact you to provide more information or documents. Waiting for this information or more supporting documents can take time. So we really encourage you to contact us at the beginning of your application process when you start or when you have an idea. If you do this, we can support you in getting everything you need, recommend who you can ask a support letter for, what you can include in your support letter, provide those kinds of recommendations, work together so that your application is complete when it comes to us. So after we review the application, it gets sent to Indigenous Services Canada. They're the ones who process the application and they make the decision. A common question that we get is, how long does it take for us to receive a decision? Individual applications are processed within 48 hours, but that is only when all of the information is received. If Indigenous Canada does not have enough information to confirm the product, the service, or how it relates to the child, more time may be necessary to get this information. ISC will contact us if they have any questions or if they're missing documents. We then work with you to provide that information. Group application requests are processed within 1 week of receiving all the necessary information. So again, if Indigenous Services Canada requires more information or they have questions, they will contact us. We will work with you to get that information. Since it may take time to collect information and supporting documents, the 48-hour clock does not start when your application is submitted to us or when we send it to Indigenous Services Canada. The clock begins when ISC has all the information they need to make a decision. Again, the 48-hour time frame does not start when you send us your application. As mentioned in previous slides, once it gets sent to Indigenous Services Canada, they will review the application and decide. There's 4 possible decisions. The most common is an approval, request for more information, escalation, and lastly, which is very rare, denials. Once a decision is made, they inform us, and then we contact you. The first and most common decision is an approval. Here you have an example of a letter of approval, and the most important piece is the ISC number. So it's going to have in the middle of the letter ISC and 4 to 5 numbers, and these help us identify your application. It will also include details of your approval. So what services you've been approved, what items, and your total funding that has been approved. We received this letter from Indigenous Services Canada, and we sent it to the applicant, whoever submitted the application, whether it's the parent, the community worker, the doctor, whoever submitted it. And while we send you that email, we also let you know what the next steps are, who to contact for reimbursement, or how you access this funding. In some cases, Indigenous Services Canada will request more information. We support you in getting that information and work with you to get your applications approved. Examples of things they may request are receipts as proof of payment, doctor referral, receipts for prescriptions, maybe a support letter if you did not submit one, or maybe they need more general information so that they can understand the child and the request better. If you remember from the beginning of the presentation, we also review your applications. So we try and make sure that all your information is there to help move the process along, to avoid Indigenous Services Canada asking questions and potentially delaying the process. It's even more rare that an application gets escalated. Again, we review the applications before they're submitted, and if you provide the information and documents that Indigenous Services Canada is requesting, if they request more information, it's not likely to get escalated. However, there are specific situations where they cannot make a decision and it's sent to the national office. An example of this is if the child is above 18 years old. That is not within Indigenous Services Canada's guidelines for Jordan's Principles, so it goes to the national office and they review the application with a multidisciplinary team. It's very rare that applications are denied. If they are, that decision comes from the national office and you will receive a letter that explains why it was denied. You can also appeal your decision up to 1 year when the request was denied, and we can support you in the process. Things to remember about the process of Jordan's Principle is to contact us at the start when you have an idea for an application or when you start. We can support you in getting the information that you need so that your application is complete, as strong as it can be, so it goes all the way through the process very efficiently. Again, if your application is complete, there's no time delay. If something is missing, we will have to contact you, and that can create a delay in how long you will receive your decision. That is the process of Jordan's Principle from submitting an application until you receive a decision. There is another presentation on how to get reimbursed and what happens once you have your approval letter, but this one really just focused on how the process is and how long it can take. We encourage you to contact us at the beginning of your application, maybe if you have an idea or you start filling out the application form. We have a lot of experience in what kind of support you need for applications, and we can help you make your application as strong as possible so that it really goes very efficiently through the process and you can get a decision quicker. It's important that you make sure your application is complete. If information is missing, contact information, consent forms aren't signed, then we have to contact you, get that sorted before we can move on. So it really just delays the time that you will get your decision. Again, the 48-hour clock only starts when all that information is received. We don't make the decisions. It's Indigenous Services Canada, and we inform you at every step in the process. And we also work with you and support you in gathering the documents and information that you need. As a reminder, please send all your applications, questions, ideas, even concerns to this general email. And if you want more information on Jordan's Principle or applications, you can also find us online at the Cree Health Board website or at the Disability Program Specialized Services website. Miigwech, thank you very much for listening today. If you have any questions or concerns about how to fill out an application form, we also have a presentation on that. Another presentation on support letters and how to make a really strong support letter for your application. And lastly, the most important thing, once your application is approved, how do you access the funding? What do you do to get reimbursed? How do you receive the items? We have another presentation on the after approval. So thank you very much for listening. Have a great rest of your day.